Okay, guys, welcome to the fourth lecture for our PSTM or Strategies in Teaching Health Education in Medical Laboratory Science. Anyways, our fourth lecture is all about adult learning or the difference between, well, pediatric learning, which means learning for children, and learning for adults. So this time we're going to focus on how adults learn because, well, you are considered to be young adults. Okay, so the adult learning theory is called andragogy. So andragogy comes from the root word andra, which means adult, and then goji meaning learning. So this is synonymous to adult education, and this is the art and science of adult learning. Now, when you say pedagogy, as the root term suggests, it's about pediatric learning, which means you are teaching children or kids. Now, Knowles has five assumptions of adult learners. Number one is self concept. So, as a person matures, his or her self concept moves from one being a dependent personality towards one of being a self directed human being. So, kapag sinabi po nating self concept, according to Knowles, that means that instead of having to be dependent on something, we learn to be self-directed. Meaning, nagkakaroon na tayo ng sarili nating sense of purpose and nagkakaroon na rin tayo ng sense of learning na gusto natin. Next, the adult learning experience. So as a person matures, he or she accumulates a growing reservoir of experience that becomes an increasing resource for learning. Okay, so later we're going to talk about the foundation. Kasi sometimes excuse me, sometimes as a person matures, nagkakaroon tayo ng more foundation. And that foundation is perhaps one of the most important things that we need to have before we learn more advanced concepts. Next is the readiness to learn. As a person matures, his or her readiness to learn becomes oriented increasingly to the developmental task of his or her social roles. So, kapag sinabi po natin readiness to learn, adults have this kind of readiness to learn wherein they try to direct themselves in their position in the societal structure. So, ako, for example, I am very much inclined to learn things for online teaching and for teaching, and I'm also inclined to learn things in relation to medical technology and so on and so forth. Okay, so basically, once you become an adult, you are ready to learn things that are related to your interest and your practice. Okay, so kung police ka, you are ready to learn things that are police related. If you are a medical technologist, then you are willing to learn or ready to learn things that are medical technology related. Next is orientation to learning. No? So as a person matures, his or her time perspective changes from one of postponed application of knowledge to immediacy of application. As a result, his or her orientation toward learning shifts from one subject centeredness to one of problem centeredness. Okay, so instead of having to learn subject centered concepts, which means you're just learning it for the sake of it, we have this problem centeredness, we call it. So, as a result, his or her orientation toward learning, instead of having it subject oriented, you have your problem oriented. So, we focus more on problem solving skills and we learn things as we encounter the problem. Okay, so we don't usually learn a new subject. We learn the different nuances on how to solve problems that might arise when that subject is concerned. Okay, next, motivation to learn. As a person matures, his motivation to learn is internal. So, unlike when we were younger, na ayaw natin mag-aral, and I'm also guilty of this. Nung mas bata pa ako, I did not like studying. I did not like learning at all. But now that I am an adult, I do enjoy learning as well. Okay, so from different topics of interest, I like learning online games. I like learning new concepts in medical technology. I like learning from new technology and so on and so forth. Okay, so as we mature, our motivation to learn is internal. So nagkakaroon na tayo ng learning sa pagkatao natin. Okay, so let's compare adult learning versus childhood learning. So here is a list of things about childhood learning. So you have your rote memory, repetition, testing as feedback, gathering building blocks, vertical and additive. Whereas in adult learning, you have your conceptual, contextual, continuous, horizontal, and integrated. And then you have your pedagogy and andragogy. So basically, childhood learning is all about repetition. Diba? That's the reason why when you were in high school and when you were in grade school to high school, when you were in your preparatory courses, or rather your preparatory years, and your teachers would often repeat every year, year after year, 'di ba? One specific topic. Kaya 'di ba, when we were in high school, bago tayo pumasok sa isang topic, may review muna, 'di ba? So binabalikan muna natin because we want to repeat and repeat so that we learn. Okay? That's also the reason why you have lots of drill sheets, seat works, quizzes when you were in high school because you need feedback. Okay? And you also gather building blocks, which is very fundamental. What I mentioned earlier, very important po yung fundamentals natin. And then also childhood learning is vertical and additive. So nadadagdagan at nadadagdagan siya. Okay? Um, as compared to your adult learning, which is conceptual, contextual, continuous, basically all the things that you are experiencing right now. So instead of having to learn by repetition, kayo ay considered to be young adults and you're mature enough to have conceptual learning. Okay, so you learn theories about your practice, you learn the concepts of your practice, and then you learn by context. Diba? So that's the reason why you learn more effective, or it's very much effective when you what do you call this? When you give examples. Okay, so nabasa ko dun sa mga ano nyo, mga feedback nyo in our graded discussion that the best or some of the best teachers that you've encountered has contextual teaching styles. Meaning, they give a lot of examples, they give context, nagbibigay sila ng scenarios, and so on and so forth. Okay, so nabasa ko yun sa feedback nyo, and that proves that you are already at that part na nagmamature na kayo and that your learning is going andragogy na. So, meaning nagkakaroon na tayo ng adult learning. And also continuous because again, adult learning should be progressive. And of course, horizontal and integrated, meaning that it involves your subject of interest. So hopefully, again, this is one of the things that I personally endorse all the time and I personally tell my students is that one of the major reasons why I did excel in medical technology, or rather, I did finish in medical technology, is because I did enjoy the subjects. Okay, so I was genuinely interested with the subjects, and I was genuinely enthused by the things that will I learn, and so dun napadali ako sa medical technology because I love the subjects. Okay, so comparison of pedagogy to andragogy. Need to know. By the way, the first column is the assumptions, and then that is your comparison on the next two columns. So need to know, learn when the teacher or what the teacher wants them to learn. So kapag mga bata, 'di ba, children learn what the teacher wants them to learn. So kung ano yung tinuturo ni teacher, yun din yung natututunan ni student. However, sa andragogy, need to know why they need to learn something. Now, this is one of the most controversial concepts, or rather one of another important concepts na kailangan nyo malaman. Okay, so the reason why some of us, kayo din, is having a hard time learning something is because in your mind, it's circulating that you don't need to learn this. Hindi nyo kailangan matutunan to. So kaya kayo nahihirapan sometimes kasi inisip nyo hindi ko naman kailangan to eh. Which is true. Kasi 'di ba nakakatamad talaga. Bakit ko inaaral to? Hindi ko naman gagamitin. 'Di ba? So, that's one of the mindsets that I would definitely like you to change. Kasi ako, I personally learn from when I think na, baka kailanganin ko to. 'Di ba? Baka. kailanganin ko to. And that's enough for me to push myself and motivate myself to learn from what I need to learn. Okay? So, instead of need to learn, niisip ko na lang, baka kailanganin ko. And in case I need it, I know. Okay? Next is self-concept. So, perception of being dependent on the teacher for learning. Now, this is one of the things that I've observed in a lot of our students. No? Now, I'm sure iniisip nyo, sometimes may denial tayo, no? But I personally have observed this in our students. So not only during online teaching, but also in physical classes. No? But before the pandemic happened, I did realize that students in your level, no, first year, second year, they're still dependent on the teacher for learning. So kapag hindi sinasabi ng teacher na aralin mo to, well, hindi nyo pa inaaral. And that's one of the things na gusto kong alisin nyo sa inyo because you have to have the initiative to learn. Okay, so um, yung activities natin, no? So disclaimer lang, ano, yung activities natin, answer as I instructed to you. Pero yung mga lectures natin, it's up to you to do advanced reading kung gusto nyo. Okay, so nasa syllabus naman yung resources natin and you might learn something new na baka mamaya hindi ko mabanggit dito sa class natin. Okay? And that brings us to andragogy, which is adult learning. Feel responsible na kayo sa sarili niyong learning. Okay? Now, this is one of the main differences between a teacher and a professor. Okay, so a professor assumes that you are already in the part of adult learning, meaning na kayo na yung nagiging responsible sa sarili niyong learning. So, meaning kung ano man yung sinasabi ko sa inyo is not necessarily something that you want to adapt or should adapt, but it's something that makes you responsible that you have to learn this. Okay, so that's why Fatima has changed to outcome-based education is because we want to be training professionals, and professionals, one of the traits of professionals is their responsibility in learning their concepts. Okay, next, role of experience. The teacher's experience, not the children, is what counts, or the teacher's experiences, and then in andragogy or adult learning, adults learn from each other's experience, which is true. Tama. Readiness to learn must be ready when the teacher says when they should be ready. So yung mga bata, di ba? Lagi nating sinasabihan, ito yung topic natin, aralin nyo to, be ready for this one. Now, adults, on the other hand, are only ready when they feel the need to know. Ibig sabihin, ready lang silang matuto kapag gusto nila yung topic, kapag iniisip nila na yung topic na yun ay magbibigay sa kanila ng additional knowledge na makakatulong sa kanila in the future. Okay? Next, orientation to learning. Si mga bata ay subject-centered pa rin, meaning meron tayong math, science, and so on and so forth. Now, si andragogy or si mga adults natin, meron tayong life-centered or task-centered orientation. Meaning, the things we learn should be things that are applicable in our life as a professional, in our life as a person, and it is task-oriented or task-centered. Meaning, may kailangan akong gawin bukas. So, aaralin ko ngayon. 'Di ba? Or may kailangan akong gawin in the future. So, aaralin ko ngayon. Okay? So, that's one of the things that you should impart to yourself. Next, motivation. Externally motivated ang mga bata. Meaning, hindi nila gagawin ang mga bagay kapag hindi mo sinabi sa kanila. Okay? So, guilty ba tayo dyan? Yes, ako rin. Actually, sa totoo lang, guilty. In my learning experience, I am externally motivated. So, dati. But I have already realized that recently nag-transform na ako into a adult learner. No? So, primarily internally motivated. I learn things because naisip ko gusto kong aralin at makakatulong to sa atin. Okay? So, konti na lang yung external motivation. Okay, so learning propositions. Now, sandali na lang to. This is just propositions by different authors. So you have Watson, Knowles, Holton, and Swanson. Starting with number 1, behaviors which are reinforced are most likely to occur. Do you agree? Yes. That is why, sa mga nagsabi ng no, nabasa ko po guilty kayo dyan. nabasa ko dun sa mga feedback nyo sa graded discussion natin about what learning style or what teaching style did you enjoy the most. And a lot of you answered that you did love a teacher who gave stars, who gave merits to students. Naalala ko, nakita ko, parang senior high school na yata yon, nagbibigay siya ng stars or ng stickers kapag may magandang performance yung student. And that helped them, sabi nila, keep track of their progress. Now, it makes them feel good, diba? Achievements make you feel good, and perhaps that's the reason why yung mga simple rewards na yon helps in your, excuse me, helps in your learning. Which is true. Totoo naman, di ba? Behaviors which are rewarded or reinforced are most likely to occur. So kapag nakikita mo na may nagigain ka sa isang bagay or sa isang behavior, inuulit-ulit mo siya. Next, sabi ulit ni Watson, sheer repetition without indications of improvement or any kind of reinforcement is a poor way or to attempt to learn. Now, sabi nga nila, di ba? Only an idiot, I paraphrase, only an idiot tries to do something, the same thing, over and over again and expects different results. I think it was Einstein who said that. Di ko alam, di ko alam. Okay, I'm not quite sure at this point. But anyways, ang sabi po dito, sheer repetition without indications of improvement or any kind of reinforcement is a poor way to attempt to learn. So kapag inuulit-ulit mo daw yung bagay at hindi mo nakikitang natututo ka, then try to change something up. Okay? Let's try to tackle our learning styles. Kasi baka mamaya, hindi pala siya pasok dun sa learning styles natin, tapos pinapahirapan natin yung sarili natin when in fact, meron naman tayong mas magandang paraan para matuto. Okay? Next, threat and punishment have variable and uncertain effects upon learning. They may make the punished response more likely or less likely to occur. They may set up avoidance tendencies which prevent further learning. Now, this is actually true, no? Threat and punishment. Kapag tinatakot mo yung bata, uh, uncertain yung effect niya. So, meaning, they could either be afraid or they could either hate you. Okay? Pwede nilang hindi na ulitin yung ginawa nila kasi natatakot sila, or ulit-ulitin nila kasi galit sila sa'yo. Okay? So, anyways, ang sinasabi lang po dito that threat and punishment is not a good partner with education. So, kapag tinatakot mo yung students mo, hindi natin makokontrol yung effect niya. Okay? It could have negative effect. It could have a positive effect, but for a negative connotation, no? Kaya naging positive yung effect kasi natatakot na yung estudyante sa'yo. So that is still not a good not a good way to learn. Okay, so naulit lang. Number 4, reward or reinforcement to be most effective in learning must follow almost immediately after the desired behavior and be clearly connected with that behavior in the mind of the learner. So, okay. Ito po yung sinasabi natin kanina, no? So, reinforcement should occur right after the desired behavior is shown. Okay? So, baka kasi mamaya, may ginawa si student na maganda or may ginawa yung student na maganda and then bibigyan nyo sila ng reward 1 week after. So nakalimutan na nila na may achievement pala sila, tsaka mo lang siya binigyan ng reward. So hindi na form yung association. Okay? Hindi na re-reinforce na ay maganda pala to or maganda yung experience ko dito. Hindi na form yung association na yon. Kaya kapag magbibigay ng reward or reinforcement, dapat almost immediately after it has been exhibited. Okay, next, learners progress in any area of learning only as far as they need to in order to achieve their purpose. Often, they do only well enough to get by. With increased motivation, they improve. Now, adults are motivated to learn to the extent that they perceive that learning will help them perform tasks or deal with problems that they confront in their life situations. So, kaya sabi daw ni Watsons, no, learners progress in any area of learning only as far as they need to. Ibig sabihin, inaaral lang nila yung mga bagay na gusto nilang aralin kasi kailangan nila. which is sometimes true. Kaya ang sabi naman ni Knowles, Holton, and Swannon, adults are motivated to learn to the extent that they perceive that learning will help them perform their task or deal with problems that they confront in their life situation. So, almost the same, no? But sinasabi lang ni Watson that learners learn what they need, and then sabi naman ng tatlo, adults are motivated to learn. Basically, yung motivation nila is need. So, in essence, the same lang naman, no? Forgetting proceeds rapidly at first, then more and more slowly. So recall shortly after learning reduces the amount forgotten. So sinasabi ni Watson dito that forgetting proceeds rapidly at first, ibig sabihin, unang beses mo banggitin sa mga bata or unang beses mo banggitin sa mga pasyente mo, makakalimutan nila yan. Pero ulit-ulitin mo, pabagal ng pabagal yung pagkalimot nila, which is true, 'di ba? May tinatawag nga tayong muscle memory. So the same with our actual memory. Kaya kapag dahan-dahan natin or inuulit-ulit natin, nahihirapan na silang kalimutan. Next, learning from reading is facilitated more by time spent recalling what has been read than by rereading. Okay? So, sabi nila, kapag nagbabasa daw kayo, instead of, eto I'm sure guilty kayo dito. Basa, next page, basa ulit, and then balik, basa na naman. Okay? So, again, sabi ni Watson dito, learning from reading is facilitated by recalling instead of rereading. So kapag nakabasa kayo dito, this is one of the techniques that I employ. Ginagawa ko to when I was in college. Basa ako dito, tapos kukuha ko ng bagong papel, and then isusulat ko ulit yung nabasa ko. Just to see kung ano yung natutunan ko or ano yung na-retain ko sa isip ko. Okay, that's one of the things na pwede nyo ring matutunan or pwede nyo ring gawin. So again, babasahin ko, kukuha kong bagong papel, and then isusulat ko yung mga naaalala ko. Okay, so instead of pagkabasa nyo, nakalimutan nyo, basahin nyo ulit. Mas maganda, kapag binasa nyo, isulat nyo without looking at your without looking at your original sheet. Okay, so tip lang. Next, the best way to help pupils from a general concept is to present the concept in numerous ways and varied situations, contrasting experiences with and without the concept, then to encourage precise formulations of the general idea in its application in situations different from those in which the concepts was learned. So basically, ito rin isa sa mga sagot nyo. To help pupils from a general concept is to present the concept in numerous ways and varied situations. So, nagbibigay ng maraming examples, nagbibigay ng mga metaphors. So, for example, nagkaroon ako ng concept na itinuro sa inyo. Sasabihin ko rin sa inyo, saan nyo ito magagamit in medtech? Diba? This is what I was employing in our previous lectures. Sinasabi ko kung paano nyo ituturo sa bata, kung paano nyo ituturo sa patient nyo, and sa mga coworkers nyo. So, how are you going to apply these concepts in different parts of your life? And that would facilitate learning as well. So, nakita ko rin naman yan sa graded discussion natin that you've answered, may mga sumagot na gusto nila yung teacher, yung teaching style, kasi nagbibigay ng maraming examples, nire-relate sa ibang bagay, and so on and so forth. Okay? Next, sabi ulit ni Watson, when children and adults experience too much frustration, their behavior ceases to be integrated, purposeful, and rational. Blindly, they act out of the rage, discouragement, or withdrawal. This threshold of what is too much varies. It is lowered by previous failures. Now, perhaps this is one of the things that is most relevant today, since we are in online teaching, yung responsibility to learn is fell in the hands of the students. Okay, so dahil nga wala kami dyan, which we also regret not being physically present to teach you and to guide you in your studies, yung learning falls in your hands. So, minsan, and I do recognize this, no? may mga limits tayo ng learning. Sometimes kasi nagkakaroon tayo ng frustrations kasi kahit anong basa ko, bakit hindi ko maintindihan? Okay? So, instead, kapag nagkakaroon kayo ng ganong scenarios, the best thing to do is take a rest, take a break. Hindi ko sinasabing mag-absent kayo or magwalwal kayo ng 2 araw, 1 linggo. All you need to do is take a break, play a game, drink some water, watch a show. Gawin niyo yun. Bakit? Kasi ang sabi nga ni Watson, kapag frustrated daw tayo, meaning stressed, okay? Yung behavior natin ceases to be integrated. Nawawala yung galing natin, kumbaga. So instead of having a plan on how to learn, ang nangyayari, nagkakaroon tayo ng inis. Naiinis tayo kasi bakit hindi natin maalala, bakit hindi natin ma-retain, bakit hindi natin matutunan. 'Di ba? So, the threshold of what this too much varies. Ibig sabihin, this is different from person to person. So, baka mamaya ako, personally, natatapos ko na or mabilis ako dahil mataas yung threshold ko. And then, yung iba, medyo nahihirapan pa. And then, yung threshold na yon, yung frustration natin, is lowered by previous failures. Ibig sabihin, kapag madami kang bagay sa past mo na hindi mo naintindihan, kinalimutan mo na lang, in the future, magkakaroon ka rin ng ganung mga scenarios and then bababa yung tolerance mo. So as much as possible, do not frustrate yourselves. Okay? This is also true kapag nag-exam kayo. And in fact, this is one of the things that most government exams do or government examiners do. Sometimes they put the first page of the exam as the hardest page para yung mga frustrated lagi, yung mga hirap na hirap ay ma-blanko yung isip, 'di ba? So this is one of the things that um, examiners sometimes do. Next, no school subject are markedly superior to others for strengthening mental powers. General improvement as a result of study in any subject depends on instruction designed to build up generalizations about principles, concept, formation, and improvements of techniques of study, thinking, and communication. So basically, sinasabi ni Watson dito, walang school subject, may it be math, biochem, clinical chemistry, hematology, and so on and so forth, walang mga subjects that is superior in strengthening mental powers. So, it's a myth na sinasabi natin, kapag napasa mo yung subject ni ganyan, magaling ka na. Okay, so not necessarily. It is a result of how it is taught instead of the subject itself. So wala siya dun sa subject, nandun siya sa technique ng pagtuturo, nandun siya sa technique ng pag-aaral, and in the end, madadevelop nyo yon sa sarili nyo. Okay? Next, what is learned is most likely to be available for use if it is learned in a situation much like that in which it is to be used immediately, preceding the time when it is needed. Okay, so sinasabi lang dito ni Watson na kapag ang isang bagay natutunan mo at nagamit mo agad, mas malaki yung chance na ma-retain mo siya. Okay? What do you mean by available for use? Ang meaning nito ng available for use is magagamit mo siya in real life. Kasi sometimes, may mga concepts tayo na natututunan, pero pagdating natin in practice, iba naman pala. 'Di ba? So, mas madali daw natin magagamit yung mga concepts na natutunan natin kasi ginagawa natin siya as opposed to yung concepts na natutunan natin habang sinusulat or binabasa natin siya. Okay? Next, children and adults even more remember new information which confirms their previous attitudes better than they remember new information which runs counter to their previous attitudes. Okay, this is all about what we believe in. Okay, so kapag ang isang bagay kino-confirm yung mga bagay na alam natin, mas madali nating matutunan. However, kapag may isang bagay na kontra or contrary to our previous attitude or behavior, mas nahihirapan tayong tanggapin siya. 'Di ba? Ang sabi nga nila, ang mga tao daw ayaw naman talaga nilang marinig yung mga gusto mong sabihin. Gusto lang nilang marinig yung mga iniisip nila pero nanggaling sa'yo. Diba? It's one of the things na tumatak sa akin nung nabasa ko eh. Kasi uh, I find myself guilty of that sometimes. But I try to keep an open mind, of course, as a professional. Siyempre, you have to listen to each of the sides. So I have to listen to other people as they listen to me. Okay, so sometimes yung mga philosophies ko, yung mga paniniwala ko can be wrong. And if others prove me wrong, so for example, na may sinabi sila sa akin na mali yung ginagawa ko, then I would have to adapt. Okay? Kasi that's just how being a professional is. Hindi pwede na kung ano lang yung pinaniniwalaan mo, yun lang. You have to be flexible. You have to be able to adapt to situations, especially when you are empirically incorrect. Okay, but anyways, tumatak siya sa akin kasi nga, a lot of people I find is guilty of that. No? Gusto lang nilang marinig yung mga iniisip nila. And kapag nasabi mo yung gusto nilang marinig, tuwang-tuwa sila, they seem happy. And then kapag hindi nasabi mo naman yung kontra dun sa pinaniniwalaan nila, ayun na, triggered na, 'di ba? So, point to reflect on. And lastly, adults need to know why they need to learn something before undertaking to learn it. So, totoo yan, no? Adults. Kaya po kayo, pansinin nyo, di ba, nung high school, from grade school to high school, yung mga subjects nyo, nakadesign na para sa inyo. Okay, so, second year, aaralin nyo to. Third year, aaralin nyo to. Fourth year, aaralin nyo to. But it's much more flexible in college. So, kapag nasa college or university na kayo, you have this option. Yung curriculum kasi natin, it's designed by experts, by professionals, para mas maganda yung learning experience nyo. Para mas may sequence siya, kumbaga. But you do have the option not to take a subject. You do have a choice na wag mo nang kunin tong subject na to or kunin yung mga subjects na yun for as long as you finish the prerequisites. Kasi nga, the thing is, you are given the choice when you are ready to learn a subject. So like for example, itong PSTM, pwede nyo namang hindi mo nakunin to eh. 'Di ba? One of the misconceptions kasi and things that na instill sa culture natin is kailangan 4 years yung college. But in other countries hindi naman eh. When they have college, they don't have this concept of finishing on time. Kasi meron tayo dun eh. But in other countries, 'di ba, pansinin niyo their college is mag-e-enroll ako, they do have a goal kung kailan sila matatapos, pero they don't necessarily have this time limit. Unlike us. Okay, so ang sabi nitong ni Knowles, Holton, and Swanson is that adults need to be ready to learn because they need or they understand in themselves that they need to learn something. Okay? So, kayo kapag nagte-take kayo ng course, and this is also why I apply we apply this, no. Kapag may subject ako that is supplementary, meaning hindi siya major sa medtech, like biostatistics and epidemiology, hindi naman siya masyadong magagamit in medtech. I do ask my students and explain to my students why they need to learn something. Kasi I want them to internalize the subject. Gusto kong isipin nila, oo nga, kailangan ko matutunan to. Kasi if they don't have that, if they don't think na kailangan nilang aralin yung isang bagay, then hindi nila mai-internalize yung mga lessons. Okay? So, that's it